Hey guys, what up? Welcome to The Current Christian. I know I'm wearing my gym attire right now. I just got done hitting them weights. Be sure to work out your body. That's what God wants. Not to get too sidetracked. In this section, what we are doing is we just got done cultivating, which is essentially we just got done uncovering the surfacey level things that may be preventing the seeds, the values that God's trying to plant in your heart from growing deeper roots and producing greater fruit. But we can't just stop there at the cultivation because we are just uncovering the surfacey level things that may be preventing fruitfulness. Now, it's time to dig deep. And if you are just jumping into this series right now, I highly recommend you go back to the beginning and watch things because I'm just going to be assuming that you understand some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about here. There's a lot of foundational work that we talked about early on, so you got to check it out. You got to check it out. It's time to dig deep into some deeply buried beliefs that may actually be causing you to self-sabotage the growth and fruitfulness that God wants to provide in your life. Because if God's trying to bless your ministry, we can actually prevent God from working deeper in our lives. So we read that in the New Testament where Jesus is going to different towns, and simply because of their lack of faith, he's not able to heal them. So it's 100% possible that we can hold back God from working on our lives. Now, that doesn't mean we are holding back his bigger picture, his bigger plan, but we can definitely undermine the things that God's trying to do immediately in your life. It's the analogy goes like this. There's either big rocks that have been buried in your garden, your quote unquote, your heart or your mind, and as the roots are growing deeper, they hit this hard surface and they can't go any deeper. And these are things that we don't intentionally try to implement in our lives. Why would we intentionally try to hinder our growth, you know? Most often these are things that have been instilled onto us at an early age that has just stuck around, and as time's gone on, it's just gotten buried under deeper and deeper things, and it's like, oh, yep, it's just part of me. And that's one of the dangerous things about these hidden barriers. And we just talk about three. These are the three biggest ones that I've encountered, that I've witnessed in ministry. A common theme amongst all three of these things is that they seem foundational. They seem like they are foundational and are necessary for supporting your garden. But they're not. They are not foundational. They're actually not even meant to be there. I've written out many examples that you see in the Bible where people self-sabotage their ministry and their relationships after they are elevated to a new height. And for example, so we got Noah. Right after building the ark, the rain's gone, they're just getting out into this new area, this new land. He immediately gets drunk. And then what happens? He becomes ashamed. His son saw him naked. There's some debates as to what actually happened, but essentially his son saw him naked, and that's so embarrassing. Noah immediately gets drunk right off the boat. Moses, they're in the desert. They're seeing the promised land. And the people are like, they're wearing him down with all these questions and these things that they're asking of him. And he hits the rock out of anger. And he's like, this is what you want? And then bam, he can't go into the promised land now. Gideon, he sees himself as like the weakest person in this tribe. And God's like, hey, bro, I want to elevate you up. I want you to go out and defeat the baddies. You know, I'll be by your side. And he does it. Gideon and his crew of guys, they end up like really becoming well known in his community for helping to inspire the Israelites to do better. But then, you know what happens? He takes all the gold and things that he's won, makes a gold statue, and then Israelites, of course, they start worshiping the gold statue. They start doing all types of freaky deaky things right by it. But those are just like a few examples of things that happen when we become elevated up. And then and essentially what has happened here is their foundational beliefs deep down inside, those beliefs couldn't sustain the level of growth that God had given them. And a way you can think about it is like this. Foundation. The ground, you got the foundation you build a house on top of. If that foundation is not level, and even if it's like slightly not level, you may not notice it in the beginning, but when that building is getting higher and higher up, at first it's like, oh, it's nice and straight, but as it gets higher, it's like, wait, what is this angle? And then will collapse eventually. So we don't want that. We don't want our foundation to be slightly crooked. And that's what these barriers, these hidden buried barriers, tongue twister there, that's essentially what these create. It creates an unlevel foundation. Again, it's self-sabotaging. It's not an external thing. It's an internal thing. And Jesus talks about that too. How the words that come out of our mouth comes from our hearts. The words that come from us comes from us, you know? So, 3 rocks, 3 hidden barriers. I'm not going to go too in depth in these, but I do want to mention what they are. So, first big rock that we come across is that only those who are perfect can do or be used for great things. Now, there's 2 polar extremes here. I was taking the one extreme where it's like I have to be perfect to be used. So it's like I'm thinking less of myself. But there's another extreme there as well, which is, wow, I'm being used for great things. Therefore, I'm greater than everyone else. So isn't that crazy? If you think you need to be perfect in order to be used by God, it can go both ways, where you either think, I'm not good enough, I can't be used by God, or, wow, I'm being used by God, therefore I'm perfect. And it's like, whoa, buddy. Both can steer you in wrong directions. Many, many times in the Bible, we see about people who don't believe in themselves. And essentially, they're not only thinking that they're weak, but they're thinking that God's weak too. And you might be like, wait, what? Because they think they're weak, they think God is weak? Yep. The mentality basically goes like this. It's, I'm not good enough to be used by God, and God's not strong enough or capable enough to use me. So you see how that goes? And then the one where it's like, oh, I'm so perfect I'm being used by God, what eventually starts to happen is, I could trust God in this, but I really know what's better for me than God. So essentially, God's not wise enough or powerful enough to know what's best for me. Because I'm perfect. I know exactly what I need to do. So those both can drastically, very easily take one down the wrong route. All right, now big rock number 2. Following God's calling will lead to detachment from society and the loss of all possessions. Now this is essentially that lone monk mentality where it's like if I need to be used by God, I got to be detached from society. I can't be part of these people. I got to go up in a mountaintop. I got to go into the woods and just be away from people. And this is a very difficult one to remove because we see it a lot in the Bible where people are following or being led by God's Spirit, and what happens? They're brought into a desert, or they end up not having a lot of possessions. But that's not the end. That's a means to the end. It's just part of the journey that these people are going through. And that idea that wow, I'm afraid to follow God's calling in my life because I really think I'm just going to end up out in the woods somewhere, owning nothing and just knowing no one. And that doesn't happen at all. Jesus calls us to go out into the world, not be part of the world, but we got to be in the world. If anything, if we're following God's will, we are being even more intimately involved in people's lives, not more detached from it. And that it can stem from a belief of who God's character is and how God functions, because there's that idea that God made the universe, but he's outside of it. He's not part of it. But no, he's intimately involved and desires to be intimately involved in all of our lives and our ministry, the work, the things that we do, the people we interact with. So if anything, following God's calling in our life will actually have us be more integrated in people's lives and in society. So that's big rock number 2. A lot of people are afraid to pursue God's calling in life because they think God's just going to take everything away from me. And that's not true. And I go into, it's a tricky one. I really tried my best to really dissect that whole thing in the book. And I just don't have the time to do it really right now in the video because I want to talk about big rock number 3. Big rock number 3 is you need to suffer in your work in order to please God. It's a difficult one as well because, yes, you read about it in the Bible. And Jesus warns that we will go through hard times. But again, just like big rock number 2, it's not the end. It's a means to the end. It's just Jesus and God. They're preparing us. They're trying to say following my way, it's not going to be the easiest option. And if you face suffering, if you're facing hard times, don't think of it as, wow, I must be doing something wrong. No, like, yes, we can self-impose hardship on ourselves, which is unnecessary, but if we are doing things right, it doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to face hard times. But that is way different than I have to hate what I'm doing because that's how I know I'm pleasing God. So there's people in ministry, there's people in jobs doing work that they hate because they think that that's what God wants them to do. And that's just totally false. That's not, God's created us with unique gifts and abilities and wants us to live out those gifts and bring those abilities to the work that we're doing. And it's like if we are being used in the way that we're made, it just makes sense that we will have joy, peace, and happiness in doing the work that we do. And again, it doesn't mean there's not going to be hard times, but it doesn't mean that hardship is the way. It's just part of it, you know? And it's really just a big shame because you're not only hurting yourself when you are working in a job, doing a ministry, or a part of something that you don't feel called to. It's not just hurting yourself and your spirit, who you are, but it's also hurting others. Because that person is sitting in that chair doing work that they don't like because they think they need to, and it's taking up a spot for someone that was made by God to fill. So you're not just hurting oneself, you're hurting other people as well. And I mean, essentially all of these rocks do hurt others. It's not just impacting yourself, it's impacting other people. Because when you plant a seed, you don't just get one seed back, you get hundreds of seeds. God wants to bring fruitfulness and liveliness, not just to feed ourselves, but to help feed others as well. And when we don't have that fruitfulness, we aren't being fed and we are incapable of feeding others. It actually talks about in Leviticus, I believe, it's part of the Israelites' law that, like, don't go out of your way to pick up every single little thing from your garden as you harvest. Like, if stuff falls, just like leave it there. And it's like, well, why? That's kind of odd. And the reason why is because people who are in poverty, people who are hungry, can go into those fields and can just freely pick up the leftovers so then they can eat themselves. God wants us to be so fruitful and so full of life that we are able to pour that into other people's lives as well. And when we have these rocks that are preventing us from being fruitful and are preventing us from growing, it's also preventing us from being able to fulfill that second part, which is being able to feed and fill up others as well. So I could just keep going on and on and on about these deeper barriers, but it's awesome. It really goes in depth in here in the manuscript. And hey, if you guys like this video, please give this video a like. It would really help us out a lot. And if you want to be up to date and you want to know when our next video is going to be uploaded, hit that subscribe button as well as the notification button, the little bell icon, because that will then notify you when that next video is being uploaded. We're going to be talking about some really, really awesome stuff. I'm just trying to look right here to see like what the next thing is, but you know what? I'm gonna keep it a secret. So, hey guys, thank you again for watching, and I will see you in our next video. Peace.